Okay, tell me about life in your own words. Maybe we could start with, where did you grow up?
Where did I grow up?
Mm-hmm.
In a very good place called Brooklyn, New York.
What year were you born?
1929, need you ask? That makes me an old broad.
And what memory still feels vivid to you?
Uh, Hold just a minute, because there's always a book about a dog, and I can't think of the name of it. What memories are vivid to me? I think the name of the book was Ladder Dog. I'm not sure. Well, let me tell you what's vivid to me. I was absolutely terrified of dogs, scared to death. My grandfather, may he rest in peace, was standing on the sidewalk with me. I must have been maybe 6 years old, but it was on a broad boulevard, and a dog came rushing over to us, and I absolutely climbed his body like he was a ladder to get up. And of course, my mother was afraid of dogs, and she made me afraid of dogs until we moved into an apartment. And the people next door, their last name was Wing, W-I-N-G, and they had Pomeranians, which are not the friendliest of dogs, but that's why I fell in love with dogs. Those two little Pomeranians they had. And ever since then, life is hard without a dog.
It is. I agree with you. When you think about your younger years, what's the first story that comes to mind?
My younger years, my life began when Jerry Leaves drove into my life.
Okay.
My life began. Yeah.
And that's the one memory that you want the world to remember, or your family to remember?
Well, I actually told them that when I am no longer here and they bury me, on my tombstone where they write your name and your date of birth, I want these words, her favorite words in parentheses, "This is Jerry's wife." Those were my favorite words. When I would hear somebody say, "Oh, this is Jerry's wife," my heart just went pitter-pat. It did.
Okay. Well, sometimes the small details tell the biggest stories.
Say that again.
Sometimes the small details tell the biggest story. So, can you tell me about a place or a smell or a sound from your childhood that has stuck with you?
The fact that I was afraid of dogs. Well, my grandpa and my grandmother. This is just a funny thing. My Janice has in her house the top half of a beautiful chest that was my grandmother's. And in the chest, she had like whatever glassware she had. And my grandfather, had a bottle of Schlivovitz schnapps. That was like a brandy. It was Schlivovitz was like a prune or a plum brandy. And if he ever went to the cabinet to take a little drink, he would say to he was scared of my grandma. He would say to her, I'm just tasting. And she would say to him in Yiddish, a shikar yid, that's a Jewish man, a drunk, or whatever. And Janice still has that cabinet. My father, when it was still in my mother and father's apartment, and when my mother died and my father took an apartment, he cut the legs off, and I still have the legs under the house, but Janice has the cabinet now, and it's just beautiful.
I've seen it. It is beautiful.
I think what I really have a strong memory of is my father being able to do anything. And he was a man. And just this week, we were talking about people who went to college. And my father, I don't even think, finished high school. And he grew up in Coney Island. And Janice tells me now that my grandma and grandpa rented this house, but in order to make a little money, they would take boarders in. And when they took boarders in, my father and his two brothers had to go sleep on the roof. And she says, Papa, that's her name for my father, Papa said to him it was like heaven. It was sleeping under the stars, and he could hear the ocean in the background and smell the salt. And he said they had to go up to the roof to sleep. And that's how he met my mother, because my mother and her sisters lived in the Bronx. And they used to take a train from the Bronx to Brooklyn and rent a room for 2 days in Coney Island so they could go to the beach. Mm-hmm. And the room they rented was in my grandma's house. And after a few weeks, my grandma said to my father, Mendel, that was her name for him, Max was his name, Mendel, you have to marry this girl. And that's how they got married, in the kitchen of my grandma's rental house. And my Uncle Pacey, my father's brother, played I Love You Truly on his saxophone in the kitchen.
Aw, that's so sweet.
And, I want to tell the story to my granddaughter, Marissa, because she comes naturally to love the beach. Mm-hmm. I mean, my father grew up on the beach.
Okay, if you could sit with your younger self, the age you are now, and you're sitting with your younger self, what kind of advice or wisdom or what would you pass on to your younger self to look forward to?
I just wish I had the wisdom then that I have now. I've learned a lot, but the more I learn, the more I realize, younger self, there's something to be learned every day. And you meet interesting people and wonderful friends, like Dawn came into my life accidentally, I think, through Myrna Reese, and has become a dear, dear friend of mine.
Thank you.
Not that she's the artist, because she's my friend.
Thank you.
And I just feel so lucky, because Friday night, when I light my Shabbos candles, that's our Sabbath night, and the first thing I always say is, thank you, God, for all my blessings, because I've had many. I've had some sorrows, but we all do. But I always say, thank you, God, for letting Jerry Leaves drive into my life that day. And I hope, God, that Jerry and David are somehow together.
Do you want to tell the story about how you met Jerry, how you were on a date with someone else?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was working for a doctor, Dr. Venenga, and my Uncle Barney's brother had a liquor store, and the people who called, no, they had a pawn shop, and pawn shops in those days sold liquor. And one of the people who came into the store happened to be Snooky Glazer, Irving Glazer, and my uncle's brother, Benny Weinstein was his name, my Uncle Barney's brother, Benny, said to him, by the way, there's a new Jewish girl in town. I think you should meet. And so he gave Snooky my name and telephone number. And then I got a telephone call one day, and it was, I don't remember if it was Snooky or Jerry, called and said, your Uncle Barney's brother Benny told me to call you and said it was okay for me to call you, and I'd like to take you out to lunch. Why not? I'd get a free lunch out of that. And a car drove up. It was a gray Cadillac, I remember. And there were two men in the car. And I was wearing a little white nurse's uniform. I wasn't a nurse, but I had to put it on top of my clothes. And there were two men in the car. And I didn't know who was who. I didn't know there was going to be a second man. Well, the second man was Jerry. It was his car. And I thought I was going to have a really good lunch. Instead, we went for a hamburger. So, which was wonderful. And Jerry Liebs said to me, and I'll never forget this to the day I die. He said to me, "Do you believe in Kismet?" I think I would have believed anything he said. I think I fell in love that fast. And as he said that, he reached into the pocket, inside pocket. You know, he had a suit and a tie, and he took out a little miniature cross. I don't remember now if it was the pen or the pencil, but if I went to look at my jewelry box, I'd be able to tell you, because it was the mate to the one I had in my breast pocket. And with that pen or pencil, in front of Snooky, who was the one I had the lunch date with, he asked me for my telephone number, and I gave it to him. And my first date was actually with Snooky. And Jerry Liebs was in the car with a beautiful blonde who was his date. And in later years, I remember thinking, I was jealous of every woman that had ever been in Jerry's life before me. I mean, I literally was head over heels in love, and still am with that man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I thought I would never even go out again, and it was years before I could, after I lost Jerry, where I could even go out to dinner with anyone. But I was a very lucky woman, and I thank God all the time that Jerry drove into my life, because that's what he did. He had his gorgeous gray Cadillac, and he drove and going to pick me up. I had no idea who was in the car. And we were married 6 weeks after that. That's what's the miracle.
And how long were you married?
48 years. The miracle is he bought my engagement ring 1 week from the day he met me. He went into the Donskis. Their store was still downtown before it was on Northwest Highway, and he bought my beautiful diamond ring. And he woke up Nolan and Francis Glazer to put the ring in their safe, because I guess he wasn't sure when he was going to ask me to marry him or not. And I was living with my mother and father, sharing their apartment, because I had been married for a very short time. But what came out of that marriage was my wonderful, wonderful Janice, when I realized that I didn't want to be married anymore to that particular person. And I think my mother nearly had a nervous breakdown. My father was delighted. And so 3 weeks from the day we met, that day, that eventful day, he asked me to marry him. And 3 weeks after that, we were married. And we had 48 wonderful years, and they just kept getting better and better and better. And then when he got sick, he was gone in just about 6 weeks from when he told me he didn't feel well. But I've been blessed with a beautiful life, and now in my old age, I have beautiful friends. Thank you, Dawn. And I have this marvelous, marvelous daughter who is an angel. I always think of John and Janice as my two angels because Janice is an angel and Lewis is a tough cookie, but he's got my back, and I know that. So I'm blessed. We lost our David, and it was really rather sudden. And that's when I screamed at God. I screamed at God, how dare you? How dare you? How dare you do this? But God works in strange and mysterious ways. Something happened just last week. I can't remember now when I said God works in strange and mysterious ways. And I just hope if you're listening, you'll fix our country on the world you created. But I've been a lucky woman. And I feel like I've been blessed.
Well,
And
thank
that
you.
little pillow I bought today for my daughter Janice.
Well, thank you for telling me these stories.
Say that again.
Thank you for telling me these stories.
Oh,
I'm going to end this.